Hello, Kansas and Western fans. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. Many of you, at least a few of you, have asked in the past several months as this layout has gotten larger, how I plan to operate it. This was never designed to be a single operator layout. I've always had crew operations in mind, and it's definitely large enough to accommodate that. I've yet to be able to establish a crew. I've asked a few people, haven't found any interest yet, but it could just be that people don't really understand how this thing could be run by more than one person, or they'd like to see it a little bit more complete. I'm not sure. I'm not going to worry about that for now. I still like the railroad. I built it entirely with my ability to run it by myself if I have to. But I did want to share with you guys that I do have a plan in place for operating with the crew. So I'm going to go over that with you now.
All right, so what I have here is my crew operations scheme. And this doesn't refer to exactly how trains will be ordered, like using JMRI or car card system. I still haven't figured out that kind of scheme, but this is how I would use a crew of people to help run the railroad. And I'm totally interested in questions, comments, suggestions, anything, because I've never done this before, so I'm all ears for ideas on how I could prove this scheme or expand upon it, what have you. So we'll start off here with the jobs. I have total 11 different positions available, but only 7 could be working at one time just because of space considerations. And we're going to go over all these positions now. So first of all, I've got them broken down into crew areas, like locations they would be working more or less. So first of all would be the railroad boss. Now, more than likely, this would be my job. But basically, I would manage the train crews for the entire railroad, help to coordinate everything, help to schedule crews, and basically solve problems. It wouldn't necessarily be a boss of that much, more as just running around solving issues. I've heard that is an issue on any kind of crew-operated railroad. Is there's just a lot of things that pop up that need one person to be the answer man. And so that probably would be me, but I would definitely open that up to others that would like to try that out. Next would be mainline operations. And I would have one crew member operate trains in and out of staging to and from either yard. So we're going to show you what that means here real quick.
So if you're familiar with my railroad, you know that I have 2 different staging yards, and here's the one here that runs underneath the Royal Gorge route. The idea would be that both staging yards would be completely full of trains. And the idea from there would be to run those trains in and out of staging around the layout and into either of the yards, depending on what their orders would be for that train. And then trains either already made in the yards or that would be made by the yard crews would be run back to staging. And if you understand what staging yards are for on a model railroad, then you understand this is how trains have a purpose and how they have a location. Rather than just running around in an oval, they'll run to and from their yards to distant locations to just give the impression that we're making up these trains and tearing them down for a reason. They have places to go. So that would be the purpose of the mainline crew, is to just have one person run those trains in and out of staging around the layout to their destinations.
The next job would be the La Junta yard operations, which would basically be a yard switcher.
Now, La Junta yard isn't very big, but it does have a pretty good sized locomotive facility. And then at the other end, it's got a maintenance away track, it's got a transload facility, and just a couple of storage tracks. So with the arrival departure track on the far wall there, trains would come in operated by the mainline crew. Those locomotives would leave that train and make their way into the locomotive facility. And they would either grab a new train or after a certain amount of time, grab a new set of locomotives, I would say, and take the inbound-outbound train that would be built by the La Junta crew, which again would be a single person, and then take that train back to staging. So the La Junta crew member would be just responsible for tearing down and building trains for that mainline crew.
Next would be crew members for both the BNSF and UP sides of the Wichita rail yard.
Obviously, the Wichita yard is much larger, and I've been referring to this with 2 different names the entire time because I believe that a single crew member located on either side of the yard could definitely be kept busy building and tearing down trains for each side of the yard. Each side of the yard has its own locomotive facilities, so mainline trains would be brought into each side of the yard, and then those locomotives would leave those trains and head to the locomotive facility. From there, they could either pick up a new set of locomotives for a crew change to head back out, or that would just be the termination of that crew's job.
Next, I have my division operators, and this would be a single person that would run locals out of each of the yards.
We'll take, for example, the UP side of the Wichita yard. Locals from this side of the Wichita yard run through Towanda and then over to the El Dorado Industrial Park, to the El Dorado Refinery, and then over there on the wall to the Union Tank Car Company. So a single crew would be responsible for running locals to and from this location. Now that same person would also run locals on the lower level of this side of the room. So on the top, you have the El Dorado side and the Royal Gorge route, and also Canyon City. The thought being that if you have a single yard operator on this side of the layout working in this aisle, then you have a single operator running trains from Wichita yard or La Junta yard working on this side of the aisle, would hopefully cut down on congestion between crew operators. So what we're trying to imagine is just two people working in this aisle at any one time.
For the West Division, it would be the other side of the room that we're talking about.
So that would include the Holcomb Power Plant, Garden City, Holly. Over here, you've got the Everett Steel Mill. You've got Wichita Industrial Yard operations. And you've got Lamar down below and the Charleston Elevator. All this would be operated by a single person. And again, we're trying to minimize operations, or we're trying to minimize crew in a tight space, especially that aisle and this aisle here. Now, you might think that that is too much for one person to run, and it could well be. Again, I haven't run crew operations on this yet. I'm just trying to devise a plan to get started. But a lot of these operations are out and backs. We're not doing any industry switching. We're just doing dropping off and picking up. And a single train would probably make all the stops at one time. So, for example, let's say a local had to run from La Junta to Lamar and Holly. Well, that local isn't likely to use just a single train to get to Lamar and then head back to La Junta. It's going to use a single train to go to Lamar and Holly and then back again. So that would be a single operation there. Now on the upper level, with all these other industries in the Wichita Industrial Park, that would take quite a bit longer. But that's something I still have yet to figure out once I have a crew in place to decide how to best operate that situation.
Lastly, we have industry switching operations. 4 of the industries in my layout are large enough that I feel like they need their own switch crews.
The first is Portland Cement. You can see it's got 3 stub tracks by itself. It's got its own switch engine track, and basically it's going to handle inbound traffic from this siding. It's going to switch out the industry between loads and unloads and build its own inbound or outbound train on this siding for the local to pick up. Next, we have the Everett Steel Mill, and you can see just by the sheer amount of track here that this is definitely going to be a single person operation. Bringing in new trains to break down and have gondolas unloaded. In this area here, it's going to be picking up and dropping off loads to the actual mill itself. And that would generally be probably transferred from the sorting area. But there could be loads, I would imagine, that have already been pre-sorted that could probably just be sent right into the mill. And then here where you see these 3 cars, these are outbound product loads ready to go. So the steel mill switcher would have those placed on the inbound, outbound track for outgoing trains. Next, we have the El Dorado Refinery with its 2 tracks here for the loading terminal. There's 2 storage tracks and its track for the Petco track. There's plenty enough here to do for a single person to switch these out. And this person will also use the El Dorado yard here, which is this 3-track yard, to help manage that. And then lastly, you have Union Tank Car Company. It's 3 tracks, it's 3 shops. Cars need to be moved in between the shops depending on what their job orders are. On this track that's closest to the layout edge, that's the inbound-outbound track where trains, actually it's the outbound track because I forgot this area has 2 different tracks. So cars that are ready to go will be placed on the outbound track. The inbound local will just drop its cars in that middle track here and then pick up the outbounds and leave. So the switcher for this industry has to maneuver all these cars in and out of this area by itself. So I mentioned earlier how there would only be 2 people in either of these aisles at any one time, the yard switcher and the local. Well, I forgot to mention you've got the mainline guy who is in and out of staging, but he's going to be all over the layout, considering that staging is along that wall and that far wall there. He'll start there and then monitor his trains as he goes to either of the yards. Then you've got the yard operators working on either side of this large peninsula, and then you have the larger mill, larger industry operators that have to work their industries. I don't expect those industry switchers to be working the whole day, just because I think their operation is large enough to have its own switcher doesn't necessarily mean it will take all day. So several of these jobs could be done by one person depending on the order that's required. And that's something that the overall railroad boss would help determine. There would be a schedule in place and he would make sure that the schedule is being followed. Now you might recognize this scene at the beginning of all my construction updates. This is the door to the train room. Well, just outside this door, and despite the mess, this would be my crew lounge with a large TV that we could watch videos, whatever, and even a pool table that'll sometimes be clean. So what I envision is as many of these jobs being done as possible at one time, and if we run into a situation where there's too many people in one area trying to work, then one crew simply takes a break in the lounge while the other crew gets done what needs to be done. Well, I guess that's all I have for that. Just my first attempt at a crew operations scheme. Definitely can't offend me if you have any major comments that tell me that this is not manageable. However, I would ask if you have a better idea, please share it. I'm still trying to learn. I definitely don't know everything, but I just wanted to share that I do have an idea in place if I ever am able to put a crew together. So let me know if you think anything about this. If not, have a good day, and thanks for watching.